Hey, good morning, guys. This is Matthew, and if all has gone well, you have completed Project Zero, uh, the Hello World project, without issues. What I'm going to be doing is taking you guys through these videos step by step, the best way I know how, with my knowledge and experience, to sort of shepherd you through this information. Some of you are just going to really take to this information very, very easily, or quickly, rather. It's almost going to be second nature. And some of you, it might take a little more work. And that's just because, we're not all built the same. Some of us are very logical and technical, and some of us are almost sort of more intuitive and and less technical, essentially. I'm actually one of those folks, believe it or not, that is, I would say, kind of in between. I rely on my intuition quite a bit. I really don't identify myself first and foremost as a web developer. The real truth is it's just something that I came across. It's something that I ended up doing because it really actually did pay bills very, very well. It wasn't my dream job, but I I learned very quickly out in the real world that sometimes the jobs that you do aren't your ideal jobs. Sometimes you guys might hear me sipping from my coffee. I do love coffee and I drink coffee every morning. So I'll be doing that while I'm kind of walking you through this information. And by the way, there are going to be seven additional videos, eight altogether, including this one for projects 1 through 8. And then you've already completed Project Zero. So at this point, before you even get started, you should really be comfortable with an HTML editing program, just kind of getting it started, opening it up, of course. The one that I would suggest you use is called Brackets. You can do a Google search for Brackets HTML editing software, and it should pop up. That HTML editing software, it used to actually be available on the Adobe website for free. And I don't know why, but they made some sort of a decision at some point to make it completely open source. And now I don't even see the Adobe branding associated with Brackets. But it's a general code editing application. So you can edit HTML, of course, which is for the most part what this course is focused on, with some CSS kind of sprinkled in. But I mean, there are many different coding languages that you could explore using this editing program. And so if you are one of those extremely logical, technical folks who is really just enjoying yourself with the idea of becoming a developer, maybe maybe you need to take some additional and more advanced courses and all of this. The other thing that I love about uh, I love this web stuff because you can go online and you can find so much. Like, I'm recording this with the intention of putting it on YouTube for you guys. Well, there are many experts out there who are doing something similar. You can really become an expert yourself if you have the initiative, which is really important. I hope you guys are also very cognizant at this point that the way that I run this course is very rhythmic. Um, and it really depends on the length of the semester. I used to teach this course throughout 16 weeks, and it actually dragged a little bit because, in my opinion, the course material is it's relatively simple. And so I think speeding it up even into an 8-week course or a 5-week course is the best way to sort of digest this information. This particular circumstance, this is a 5-week course. So you guys are going to owe me one of these projects. You're going to have to be reviewing one of these videos pretty much every 2 or 3 days, like clockwork. As you know, when a project is due, there's also a quiz due, there's a reading response due, and there's an article response due. You don't have to write me a novel regarding these responses. What I'm really interested in is that you're just aware of the information that was given to you in those particular chapters. And I'm going to be, throughout these videos, I'll be reviewing my digital copy of the Duckett book as well on the screen with you guys. But I think having a physical copy is a good idea because the truth is they only cost $4 or $5 on eBay or on the used marketplace on Amazon. So they're very, very cheap, and it's a really good reference. I actually do have a physical copy, but for this particular circumstance, looking at the digital version on the screen while I'm talking to you is obviously ideal. So last time we left off, we were finishing up Project Zero, and we had, let me start screen sharing, of course. You guys should be able to see my screen at this point. So here is the Duckett book. We're going to be getting started with that. And this is where we left off regarding Project Zero. And you can see here's that HTML tag opening, HTML tag closing. So first one in, last one out. And then the next part of a general HTML structure is a head portion of the document. And notice how I've indented things over. And within the head portion of the document, there are many things that you'll learn that you can place within this location on an HTML file or document. For the time being, the only one you need to worry about is the title. Okay, so title, this is the name of my website. And then in the body portion, here's an opening and here's a closing. And by the way, I want everyone to notice there's an opening for the head and a closing for the head, and then another opening, of course. So this chapter is essentially closed. And then a new opportunity is created here with a new opening for the body and a new closing for the body. Every HTML document, for the most part, is going to follow this very basic formula. And this is something that all of you should have completed successfully in Project Zero. Within the body portion of the document, this is where you put all your visible information. For the most part, and this is 99% true, every piece of information that you put in the head portion of the document is going to be invisible. It's a little tricky here because you actually can see the title. You see the title. I might as well just show you guys. Hold the phone one moment. So you can kind of see what, this is an opportunity also to sort of share my file management. This is actually a course folder. I would highly suggest that you have a course folder. That goes for any class that you take with me, so that you can find things easily down the road. That theory doesn't always work, but we can do our best to keep things organized digitally. Here's Project Zero. This is that initial index that I'm actually looking at right now. I don't want it to stay here in Project Zero though. I actually want to, because this is all of the work that we're going to be doing in this class. It's cumulative, meaning we're constantly just building on the last thing that we did. We don't always have to, because we're working on a CV or a resume, you guys might make decisions down the road where you realize, well, I don't need this particular HTML code for my CV resume project. So if you really want to, you can omit things as you kind of proceed through projects, but there is a laundry list, excuse me, and I'll get to that in a minute. And the laundry list I take pretty seriously because I want everyone to at least try, all of these different HTML moves, so to speak, within their projects. So we'll get there. What I want to do right now is I was showing you that, yes, there's an index.html living in Project Zero, but I want to resave it and place it in Project One. And you can kind of see there's actually an index right here as well. And I don't want to overwrite it. So I'm actually going to call this, when I save as, do that right now, in fact. I'm going up to File, and I'm going to click Save As. And then I'm actually going to save a version of this in, I'm not sure if you guys can see my Finder window with the Zoom recording, but what I'm doing is, a Finder window has popped up. I'm selecting the project 1 folder, and I'm going to call this one index-1 because I don't want to overwrite my other index. And it's okay. I mean, if you guys are actually going to load a website onto a server, obviously you can't call an index file index-1. It has to be called index.html because that's the home base that a computer is always looking for, so that the rendering process can start. And rendering is a buzzword, which basically means the browser is rendering the code into something visible that the user can see, i.e. text or an image. So I don't want to lose this information, but I don't want to overwrite it. So I'm going to save it in my new project 1 folder, and I'm going to call it index-1. Okay. And let's see. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to go and I want to look at, close down project 0. I don't want to mess with that for the time being, but I think it's really important to look at the project PDF handout that I'm giving you guys. All right. And so let's go take a look at that really quickly. And so this first project, you just need to read chapter 1 and chapter 2, which is all about structure and text. We talked about structure briefly when I was giving you a heads up about the opening HTML tag and the closing HTML tag. And within those two tags, the opening and the closing, there are 2 big main areas. There's the head area, which is more or less 99% invisible, where you can put tags and attributes regarding your website. You'll learn later, this will also include things like metadata or keywords, SEO keywords, search engine optimization keywords. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're taking baby steps in this course, but you really, for the general rule, you do always need a title, and you can call it anything you want. Okay. You could just call it project 1. Why not? Right. Okay. And then there's the body opening and the body closing. And this is where all the visible content is going to go, all of the text that you're going to be exploring and learning about in this particular class or video. These questions right here, before you start to read these chapters, I would highly suggest that you take a look at these questions, because I am pulling them out intentionally. And in fact, while you're doing the reading, you can answer these questions, or you could even be doing the quiz, because hint, 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 these questions right here on the handout are essentially your quiz questions. And so it's almost sort of easier if you prime yourself and you have the foresight or the foreknowledge of knowing what kind of information you're looking for within these chapters. Okay. So take a look at these and take them seriously, and consider the kind of information that you need to be seeking out when you're doing your reading. Okay. And by the way, that's a strategy of mine. Folks learn in many different ways. Some folks learn by doing, some folks learn by reading, and other folks learn by seeing. I'm one of those people who really learns by doing, which is why I think these YouTube video tutorials are so crucial and important, because it's my sense that a lot of folks in my classes are visual learners because they're BFA students. And some folks, if they just read something, they just, absorb it like a sponge. I'm not quite one of those folks. I have to actually reread things. It takes me a little more work in order to for the information to pass into my skull. And But I'm trying to approach this class from many different, I guess, angles so that everyone leaves pretty comfortable with being pretty comfortable with HTML. The articles are just really fun, and some of this stuff doesn't necessarily directly pertain to HTML, but it's almost kind of giving you some foresight as to question marks and concerns that web developers are thinking about down the road. Hint, hint, if you're taking Web Design 2 with me, you're actually going to be thinking about user experience quite a bit, or, you know, how you're placing links on your web page. And so these are sort of priming you for the next class, in fact, or even the next steps if you do happen to get one of those web jobs, which are, believe it or not, that, you know, HTML doesn't always sound fun, but it sure is fun getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And it's also fun being in an office environment, as long as you're working with the right people. So don't I want you guys to give HTML and web development a chance. Do me a favor and just give it a shot. The project purpose, all of this stuff is, you're going to see the structure of these documents reoccurring over and over again. And so the project purpose language is going to change a little bit, but for the most part, this format that you see here on the project PDF will continue throughout the course, except the language will be different and the requirements will be different. And then I walk you through some things. Let's see. I think these are really handy. Again, I'm a very visual person. This maps out how quickly things move in this course. Okay, so project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4. This really shows this one is not applicable to this particular circumstance. This is a 16-week format. But as you can see, I mean, this is the kind of thing, and this format right here, if I'm teaching a digital media class or a drawing class, these things remain because I want folks doing, I want folks reading, I want folks reflecting, I want folks exploring articles and reading interviews. So I have a very defined way of running a course. And as you can see, there is a very specific rhythm. Okay, these documents show you that rhythm. They almost sort of look like music notation. Of course, it's diagrammatic too. You know, I have a design background, so all the projects are blue, all the readings are magenta, all the quizzes are yellow, all the articles are black, blah, blah, blah. You guys can do the rest of the math. This is just a fun graphic. I won't be putting this in all the PDFs because I think it's a little bit of an overkill, but doing well in these classes or any class with me is actually quite simple. I just need you turning in all of these things. Some of them can be turned in and completed within minutes, like a half hour or 15 minutes. It's really kind of a shame when folks leave those things unattended and they get a 0 and it affects their grade dramatically. So please don't be one of those folks. It's simple math. You know, if you're Pac-Man, obviously, and your job is to run around and grab as many points as possible, right? And I promise if you do that, then you will be happy with the grade that you leave with. I always pull out notes from the text, essentially. So these are the things I think you definitely need to know. And I'm trying to summarize them very, very quickly for you with the notes. It's a little tricky pulling the text out of here, and I'll show you why in a bit, because these are all laced with a typeface or a type, and yeah, I'll show you guys. We'll get to that road when we get to it. We're not quite there yet, but again, this is all important stuff. Okay. Also, the articles you can click on links. The links are right here. Sometimes the New York Times will only let you click on a link once, and then the second time you have to pay. So that's one of the reasons why I pulled the text out and I actually put it in this PDF document for you to review. Okay. So there's no reason, everything is available to you. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, like Pacman does, gather all the points that are necessary. So here, there isn't necessarily a laundry list on this particular PDF, but this is talking about structure, and we did talk about HTML opening and closing. We talked about the body portion of the document, and where this is all visible. Elements and tags. So, the opening, this is a paragraph tag. This is an H1 or header 1 tag. And this is me, just kind of mapping it out for you even further. Elements have an opening and a closing. For example, this is paragraph, yada, yada, yada. Here's the opening. Here is the closing. And the closing is indicated by that little slash right before the letter. The letters or letter. Attributes. Let's see. This is actually something that would eventually go into the head portion of the document. We haven't gotten there yet. We've talked about the body. We've talked about the head portion of the document. And again, this talks about things that are not visible to the user. And then the primary opening and closing. So, the structure of an HTML page is very, very simple. For some reason, in these notes here, I did omit the head portion of the document, but we talked about that over here, right? So there's no reason why you guys wouldn't be aware of that. Now, this is the fun part, and we've already kind of started doing this even with Project Zero, because we did use some paragraph text and we used some tags, opening and closings, to put some headers in, okay? But let's see that. I mean, the paragraph tag business is pretty self-explanatory, but you can make bold text. So in fact, I could come in here and see that this particular application is doing some of the work for you. It's actually a little bit of a pain, if you ask me, because I'm going to have to copy and paste this text and put it right there. It's okay. But remember, I have to make my HTML document the way that I want it, and then I have to hit Command S or Control S, depending on what kind of machine I'm on, whether it's a Mac or PC. And then I can come back, open this document, this index-1 that I created. I'm going to open that in Chrome. And by the way, just as a reminder, I think I discussed this in a previous video. I think it's always a good idea to have these two things side by side so that you can actually see them. But by the way, so I can hit refresh. We're not able to see this being bolded. Why? Because it's an H1 tag. So that was actually a really terrible example to do that with. So I'm gonna remove this. Notice how it's giving me a hint. Like if I don't have an opening and I just have this random closing, it's gonna throw everything off and give me an error. And that's why those are highlighting as red. And so that's just a warning. But if I put bold, let's see, I'm gonna emphasize today. And again, the software is trying to help. And I think you can go into your preferences and change that or turn it off if you want. I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to emphasize today. So you can see over here, we look at today, it's not bolded. It's just a plain old paragraph text. If I come over here and hit Command S, I'm going to save it. I'm going to come over here and hit Command R for refresh. Well, that's interesting. It is very interesting. I think it might have something to do. Let's go check our work here. Yeah, I did. I made a mistake here. I think that's old HTML. So let's try with just these. And hoping this will work. There it is. Now it's working. So I actually made it. You guys just noticed I made a mistake there. I was using old HTML coding techniques. Sometimes it's actually a good moment to talk about this. The way that you learn things will stay with you. Okay. It just kind of becomes part of your, I don't know, your process, and it's kind of hard to forget. So what is the saying? Old habits die hard. And you just noticed me doing that. So, but you can see it's working with just the simple B. Okay. Now I can change this I as well. Actually, instead of doing that, it's boring. Let's emphasize productive just to be fun. Okay, so I'm going to do an I. Again, I'm going to have to copy, delete, and paste. I think it's really interesting. So notice how within there's a paragraph opening and then a paragraph closing. But then as long as you have openings and closings within, I mean, that's fair game. Okay, guys. So these things can start to intermingle. They can start to kind of like work together or collaboratively. So I just saved it. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hit refresh. And now you can see the word productive. It's italicized. Okay. So we can continue going down this list that I've created for you. Some of it's going to be more useful to you. And some of it may not be useful at all, but the real truth is for the purpose of this project, it's not necessarily to pick and choose. I would like for all of you guys to at least try these things. And they don't necessarily need to stay as you build your CV or resume. You may no longer need to use superscript or subscript, but at least give it a shot. And what I was going to show you, I was talking about how if you try to take code from here, the additional, I guess, the characteristics of the text are going to come along for the ride. So if I want to edit this PDF and come in here and grab some code, let's grab this one right here. What I usually do is I kind of launder the text. What I do is I use text edit. I love text edit files because they're also a great way to kind of just, sometimes you need to save code and put it in a safe place when you're a web developer, or sometimes there are pieces of code that you don't want to write out over and over again. And you just want to have them ready to go. So I'm going to paste that. But as you can see, it's still reading as Helvetica, but I can come up here. I know you guys can't see my top bar, but I'm going to format, and then there's a function that says make plain text. So I can sort of strip that text of its characteristics so that it's just raw, unfiltered text. That's the kind of text you want to put into your HTML document. Okay, so I'm going to copy it again. And now I'm going to come over here. Let's just make a new line and plug it in. Uh-oh, and it looks like I'm getting an error there. I think I see it. I don't know if you guys see it. This is human error. There's an opening for SUP, closing for SUP. Huh. No. Interesting. Okay, let's go back over here. Just kind of curious how this is going to render. Refresh. It's working. So here's the little TH in the bottom 2. See how it's being pushed down. I'm a little perplexed as to why I'm getting an error here. I don't see any problems. So this isn't the time or place for me to unpack that, but I'm just going to delete that. But you can kind of see how it's working. That's the goal here. Okay. Now let's go back to our PDF. I think actually the line break is really, really handy, especially for a CV or a resume. And let's say I want to put a break between these two guys. Notice how there's no opening as necessary. You can just, this is one of those weird kind of exceptions. You know how there are strange exceptions to the English language? This is a strange exception. You don't need an opening and a closing. You just need the closing right here. So if I save that, I come over here and review my work. Let's go back. Yeah. So line break. Let's try this one and see how it renders. Save it. Clear. Refresh. There's that line I was talking about. So that's just a simple break, and then that you can also create a beautiful line across your entire document. That can be useful if you're separating sections out, for example, right? So I'll leave that up to you. But I guess I could leave it for now. We're just kind of playing around, right? But the next project we will be a little bit more focused on kind of developing, the CV business. Let's go back to our document. So this is an interesting moment right here. You can bold and italic up here with the B and the I are actually very similar to strong and EM. So actually I'm gonna copy and paste that whole entire line. And just so that we can compare, I'm gonna basically use the exact same sentence structure, except I'm gonna change this to strong. And emphasis. Okay, save, refresh. Okay. Looks like you can definitely see that the strong is very similar, but the emphasis is not really doing a whole lot for us. So, I mean, that's why I want you guys to kind of go through just everything and just give it a shot so that you know what things do. Okay. Go back to our PDF. Quotations can be handy, of course, as well. Let's try this one. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to run it. I'm going to through this little operation to kind of clean up the code or strip it of its characteristics. And then I can drop it into the body portion of the document. I can save it. Notice how it's a block quote is wrapped around p tags. So there's an opening and then an opening, then a closing and a closing. So the p tags are being wrapped by this block quote. Save, refresh, and look at that. It basically just indented everything, right? Kind of tapped things over a bit. Very simple, but it puts emphasis on things, right? All of these are important. Give them a shot. I think the next thing that I would do is I would find a real nice kind of CV precedent or example to sort of go by, dependent on the kind of career that you want, because it's another thing that I emphasize in all of my classes really heavily is that looking at previous examples of the way a drawing has been done, or the way a painting has been done, or the way a CV or a resume for an artist has been done. It's really, really important. And so I actually have, if I go to I have a professional assets folder. Within that professional assets folder, I have a folder called 1-CV. You guys, this is something that I actually just updated, yesterday. So I'm always updating both my HTML and my InDesign file. And just to kind of emphasize or remind you If I open this up, I mean, that's my CV that I currently have on my website. Okay. And it's something I hold on to and I'm always adding to because I'm doing a show or, something changes. But I also have in here, I have a CV precedent, and this was actually by my mentor, Patrick Nagatani. So I can open this up and take a look at it. Just opened up on my own screen. So yeah, you can kind of see, look at, there's that HR code, right? This is probably an H1. So you can start kind of formatting the structure of your document based on how other folks are doing things, right? And, I'm willing to bet that Patrick Nagatani did not know how to use HTML. That's perfectly okay, but he was still doing something similar here. He was just trying to present information, which is what you're going to be doing for the web project that is ongoing. So I think a good place to start, I'm going to start formatting this. The H1 should be Matthew Bollinger Curriculum Vitae. And the H1 is really important because search engines are always looking for H1s. So in other words, if someone does a Google search for me and they type in my name, the chances that this will pop up are really high because I have wrapped some important search information with the H1, okay? And then, I don't know, I think some other categories, I'm just going to think outside of the box right now, like education, solo, exhibitions, group exhibitions. You can even just go to my website and look. Let's do that. And so, yeah, education. The next one I have, because I've been teaching for quite a few years, is teaching experience. Education, teaching experience, because I use the language individual instead of solo. Selected group exhibitions. Organized by year. Selected projects. Let's see, artist talks. Publications, catalogs, media. I mean, you guys don't have to do it like this. Like I said, you're dreaming of who you are going to be in 5 years. So this just happens to be my CV right now. Okay. Um, Down here at the bottom, I said related professional experience because some of these things I want folks to know. For example, I have mentioned this in this class, but I was a webmaster at ENMU for a couple of years, and I was a webmaster at NTU for a couple of years. I was also a junior architect for a few years in San Francisco. So this is just additional information or contextual information that I think is important because all of these jobs that we take, they add up to really represent who we are. Now, the next thing I need to do, I need to start figuring out how these things are going to look. Now, by the way, if I save this and then I come over here and refresh, look at, there's no formatting. The only formatting is up at the top. And you know what? And the reason being is because I finished that task. I wrapped those with H1s. So the next header is an H2. And I'm gonna kind of work smarter and hard instead of harder. I'm going to copy this. And I'm just going to plug these in here. It's kind of indenting a little bit funny. Just because I'm a little OCD, I've got to correct it. And I'm getting the error, but I'm about to correct it, right? Okay. So now the HTML document's happy, no more red, save. Okay, so now we've kind of got things formatted. The next thing I want to do is we've been talking about the headers, of course. You don't have to necessarily, it's better, Google likes it better if these things are in order, like H1 and then H2. You can't have an H3 or an H6 up at the top. That's bad. And H1 should always be at the top of the page. And then it's almost kind of like if you're reading a newspaper, there's the headline at the top. And then below that, there are a variety of headers, and they continue to get smaller as you go down the newspaper print. And so, but I want all of these to essentially be the same kind of hierarchy, but you don't always have to go H1 to H2. If you wanted to, you could go H1 to H3, or maybe just, I don't know, like actually thinking about it, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe those 4 items deserve the H2 status, but then these other things down here can be H3s. Whoops. Just made a mistake there. Human error, right? Huh. I made an error here. I'm gonna figure out where. H2, H2, H3. That's very strange because I don't see an error. Huh. I do not see an error there, but it's still throwing an error. When you guys hear me kind of talking through this, you guys are going to be experiencing something very, very similar where you're just kind of wondering what the heck is going on. Yeah. Opening for an H2. Let's try this. Oh. Well, it is rendering. So as you can see, the H1 is quite large by default, and then the H2s are a step down, and furthermore, the H3s are another step down. And you can continue with that. But yeah, this is kind of bothering me. H1, H2. Well, that's really enough for project 1, guys. Just some simple formatting like this. Although the next thing I would suggest that you do is, you may not know exactly what the text is going to be, but there's this thing called lorem ipsum, which is quite handy. It's basically gibberish. Doesn't mean anything, but it's handy. Let's grab this one. There's some lorem ipsum. It's just total gibberish. And you don't always need the full paragraph. Sometimes you just need one sentence, right? And you can come over here. So if you don't know what you're going to be putting within a CV or resume, you can use that lorem ipsum. Or if you just say, look, I mean, a real good example of this is that, if you're working in a marketing office, you don't always know what the words are going to be, because there's a whole nother meeting happening perhaps that you haven't been a part of where they're discussing the content, but you still need to put some text in so you can see how things are kind of going to look. And sometimes you can even tell the content creators or the folks writing the text that you've allocated a certain amount of space or a certain amount of characters for that content. So anyway, that's when lorem ipsum can be handy. So let's go ahead and refresh. And there it is. So that's just paragraph text, plain Jane, right? It works though. So again, find a precedent. Like I was looking at that Nagatani CV, or you can even come over here and say artist CV template. And you can get an idea of what you need to do by looking at these examples. And then you can do your best to kind of recreate it with your with the HTML skills that you've got so far. But remember, the overall goal is for us to learn about the tags and what they do. So I would always advise that you go to your laundry list here and just try all these things. And sometimes it's going to connect with your precedent and sometimes it won't. But either way, try these things just so that you can kind of essentially just kind of stretch your legs a bit with HTML. All right. By the way, you can see here there are many different headings, even going down to H6. That's a little overkill. I typically, honestly, don't really use anything beyond an H3, but that's me. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys on the other side regarding project 2. Have a good day. Bye-bye.